the underestimated species. The warning came at 0347 hours, Terran Standard Time, when the Deep Space Monitoring Station Horizon's Edge detected massive energy signatures approaching the outer rim of the Sol system. Commander Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching the tactical display as dozens of red dots materialized on the holographic star map. Each dot represented a vessel larger than anything humanity had ever built. Elena's weathered hands gripped the edge of the command table. At 52, she had spent 3 decades in the Terran Defense Corps, rising through the ranks during humanity's expansion into space. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt, rescued colonists from failing life support systems, and negotiated territorial disputes between mining corporations. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. "How many ships are we looking at, Lieutenant?" she asked the young officer manning the sensor station. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez, barely 25 and fresh from the academy, swallowed hard before responding. "Initial count shows 47 vessels, Commander. The largest ones are reading energy signatures off our charts. Whatever technology they're using, it's far beyond anything we have." Elena nodded grimly. Humanity had always known this day might come. For the past century, as they expanded beyond Earth and established colonies throughout the Sol system, there had been theories about other intelligent life. The discovery of ancient ruins on Europa had confirmed that other species existed, but this was humanity's first contact with a living alien civilization. "Open all communication channels," Elena ordered. "Broadcast on every frequency we have mathematical sequences, prime numbers, pictographs showing peaceful intent. Let them know we want to talk." Meanwhile, aboard the flagship of the approaching fleet, Admiral Thexvar of the Kralaxian Dominion reviewed the intelligence reports on this new species. The Kralaxians had been the dominant force in this galaxy sector for over 2 millennia, conquering or subjugating 43 different worlds. Their society was built on rigid hierarchy, advanced technology, and the absolute belief that superior firepower solved all problems. Thexvar's elongated skull, typical of his species, tilted as he examined the primitive vessels scattered throughout the system. The aliens called themselves humans, and their technology appeared to be at least 5 centuries behind Kralaxian standards. Their ships were crude metal constructs that relied on chemical propulsion and basic fusion reactors. Most seemed designed for industrial purposes rather than warfare. These creatures have settled on 7 different planets and dozens of smaller installations, reported Subcommander Vexani, consulting her tactical display. Their population centers are completely undefended. No orbital weapons platforms, no shield generators, no fleet concentrations. Thexvar's mandibles clicked in what his species considered amusement. Another primitive species that expanded before developing proper defenses. This will be concluded quickly. Prepare the standard subjugation protocols. But as the Kralaxian fleet moved deeper into the system, something unexpected happened. The human vessels didn't flee in panic as anticipated. Instead, they began moving in coordinated patterns that defied conventional military logic. Industrial ships that should have been evacuating civilians were instead positioning themselves in seemingly random formations throughout the asteroid belt. Elena watched the alien fleets approach from the bridge of the destroyer TDS Defiant, humanity's most advanced warship. With only 12 destroyers, 8 frigates, and a handful of converted civilian vessels, the Terran Defense Corps was vastly outgunned. But Elena had spent her career studying military history, and she knew that superior numbers didn't always guarantee victory. "All ships, this is Commander Vasquez," she broadcast to the human fleet. "Execute Protocol Omega. Remember, we're not trying to win a traditional space battle. We're trying to survive long enough to show them we're not as helpless as we look." The first engagement occurred near the mining colony of Ceres Station. 3 Kralaxian cruisers approached the asteroid, expecting to find panicked miners begging for mercy. Instead, they found themselves facing something unprecedented: a coordinated defense using industrial equipment as weapons. Captain Maria Santos, commanding the mining vessel Deep Digger, had spent 15 years extracting valuable minerals from asteroids. Her ship's high-powered laser drills were designed to cut through solid rock, but when focused on the hull of a Kralaxian cruiser, they proved surprisingly effective. More importantly, Santos knew the asteroid field like her own backyard. "Kralaxian vessels, this is Deep Digger," she transmitted. "You are trespassing in Terran space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The Kralaxian response was predictable. Energy beams lanced out from their ships, targeting the small mining vessel. But Santos had already vanished behind a massive asteroid, using the rock formation as cover, while her laser drills continued their work on the enemy hull. This pattern repeated throughout the system. Human ships would attack, then disappear into asteroid fields behind planetary rings or into the complex network of space debris that surrounded industrial installations. The Kralaxians, accustomed to open space warfare between large fleets, found themselves fighting an entirely different kind of battle. On the colony world of New Vancouver, Dr. Sarah Chen worked frantically in her laboratory, converting civilian technology into defensive systems. As the colony's chief engineer, she understood better than anyone how human adaptability could be turned into a weapon. The colony's weather control satellites, designed to manage atmospheric conditions for farming, were being reprogrammed as early warning systems. Mining robots were fitted with improvised explosives. Even the children's playground equipment was being converted into camouflaged defensive positions. "The key," she explained to the Colonial Defense Committee, "is that they're thinking like a traditional military force. They expect us to meet them in open battle with equivalent technology. Instead, we're going to use everything we have in ways they never expect." When the Kralaxian landing forces arrived at New Vancouver, they found a colony that appeared to have been hastily abandoned. Buildings stood empty, vehicles were scattered randomly, and there was no sign of organized resistance. It was exactly what they expected from a primitive species. The trap was sprung when the first Kralaxian patrol entered the main settlement. What appeared to be abandoned farming equipment suddenly activated, releasing clouds of industrial adhesive that clogged their weapon systems. Modified crop-dusting drones, now carrying concentrated pesticides lethal to Kralaxian biology, swarmed the confused soldiers. Even the colony's decorative fountains had been converted into delivery systems for chemical irritants that interfered with Kralaxian sensory organs. But the most shocking moment came when a group of human colonists, including children and elderly, residents emerged from hidden positions and began methodically capturing Kralaxian soldiers using modified agricultural nets and industrial restraints. The mighty warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves defeated by farmers using gardening equipment. Space trucker Jake Morrison had been hauling cargo between Jupiter's moons when the invasion began. His ship, the Stellar Freight, was a battered old transport that had seen better decades. Jake himself was a grizzled veteran of the outer system shipping routes, known for his ability to navigate the most dangerous asteroid fields and deliver cargo on schedule, no matter what obstacles he faced. When the call came for all available ships to join the defense, Jake didn't hesitate. But instead of trying to fight the Kralaxians directly, he had a different idea. He knew something about the enemy that the military commanders didn't. The Kralaxians were following predictable shipping routes, avoiding areas they considered too dangerous for their valuable warships. "This is Stellar Freight to all civilian vessels," Jake broadcast on the merchant marine frequency. "I know these space lanes better than anyone, and I've got a plan. These alien boys think they're smart, but they don't know how we do business out here." Jake's plan was simple, but brilliant. The civilian fleet would use their knowledge of local space conditions to lead the Kralaxian forces into areas where human advantages would be maximized. Radiation fields that human ships could navigate safely would interfere with Kralaxian sensors. Debris fields that looked random to alien eyes were actually carefully mapped navigation hazards that could destroy unwary vessels. As news of these unexpected victories spread throughout the human colonies, something remarkable happened. The species that the Kralaxians had dismissed as primitive and disorganized began to demonstrate the one quality that had allowed humanity to survive ice ages, plagues, and countless other disasters throughout their history: adaptability. Admiral Thexavar stood on his flagship's bridge, staring at reports that made no tactical sense. His forces should have achieved complete victory within hours. Instead, They were facing coordinated resistance from an enemy that refused to fight by established rules. Worse, the humans seemed to be learning and adapting their tactics in real time, turning each engagement into a learning experience that made them more effective in the next battle. "Sub-Commander," he said slowly, "request reinforcements from the Dominion fleet. It appears we have underestimated this species." As Part 1 concluded, the stage was set for an even greater confrontation. Humanity had proven they wouldn't surrender without a fight, but the real test was yet to come. The Gambit unleashed. 6 days after the initial engagement, the reinforced Kralaxian fleet arrived at Sol's outer boundary. Admiral Thexvar now commanded 120 vessels, including the massive dreadnought Eternal Conquest, a ship capable of reducing entire planets to ash. The Kralaxian High Command had been disturbed by reports of resistance from what should have been a routine subjugation, and they were determined to end this embarrassment quickly and decisively. Elena Vasquez studied the tactical display from her new command post aboard the converted space station Haven Point. The station had originally been a civilian research facility studying solar winds, but Dr. Sarah Chen's engineering teams had transformed it into a sophisticated command and control center. Every human ship, from military destroyers to converted garbage scows, was now part of a coordinated defense network. "They've brought enough firepower to sterilize every inhabited world in the system," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez, who had been promoted to Elena's chief tactical officer. "Energy readings suggest their flagship alone has more destructive capacity than our entire fleet combined." Elena nodded, but her expression remained calm. Over the past week, she had been working with an unusual group of advisors: historians, game theorists, sociologists, and even a circus performer who understood crowd dynamics. Together, they had developed what they called the Terran Gambit, a strategy that would either save humanity or result in their complete destruction. "The key to understanding our enemy," explained Dr. Amanda Foster, a cultural anthropologist who had been studying the limited data available on Kralaxian society, "is that they've never faced a species like us. Every civilization they've conquered has followed predictable patterns: centralized command structures, standardized technology, logical military responses. We're about to show them what chaos theory looks like in practice." The battle began at 1200 hours when the Kralaxian fleet moved to attack Earth's orbital facilities. But instead of defending their homeworld, the human fleet scattered in what appeared to be complete panic. Ships fled in all directions, abandoning defensive positions, and leaving Earth apparently unprotected. Admiral Thexvar watched this development with satisfaction. Finally, they show their true nature: cowards who abandon their own world when faced with superior force. All ships advance on the primary planet. We will make an example that the galaxy will remember. But Elena's plan was just beginning. As the Kralaxian fleet moved toward Earth, they found their progress slowed by an unprecedented obstacle course. The space around Earth wasn't empty, as it appeared on long-range sensors. Instead, it was filled with millions of pieces of carefully positioned debris, discarded spacecraft components, construction materials, even compressed garbage from the orbital cities. Each piece of debris was too small to show on military sensors, designed to track large vessels, but collectively they formed a navigation nightmare. Kralaxian ships, accustomed to the clear space lanes of their own territory, found their hulls peppered with micro-impacts that damaged sensitive equipment and interfered with their precise formation flying. Jake Morrison grinned as he watched the enemy fleet struggle with what humans called the junkyard approach. "Welcome to human space, boys," he muttered, piloting his converted freight hauler through gaps in the debris field that he had helped create. "We've been cluttering up this neighborhood for 300 years. The real surprise came when the Kralaxian fleet reached Earth's immediate vicinity. The planet wasn't undefended as they had assumed. Instead, it was surrounded by the most unusual defensive system ever conceived: a coordinated network of civilian spacecraft acting as mobile weapons platforms. Dr. Sarah Chen's masterstroke had been to recognize that human civilization's greatest strength wasn't advanced technology, but rather the ability to improvise and adapt. Every orbital facility, from shopping centers to retirement homes, had been converted into a component of the defense network. Solar collectors became focused energy weapons, waste processing plants became chemical weapon factories, and communication satellites became coordination nodes for swarm attacks. The battle that followed defied every principle of space warfare known to galactic civilization. Instead of organized fleet engagements between capital ships, it became a chaotic melee where wedding shuttles equipped with mining lasers attacked alongside garbage scows, carrying improvised explosives, while luxury yachts served as high-speed reconnaissance units that could outmaneuver anything the Kralaxians had. Captain Santos, now commanding a flotilla of converted mining vessels, led a particularly devastating attack on the Kralaxian flagship. Her ships approached the massive dreadnought not from the front or sides, where its heaviest weapons were positioned, but from directly above and below, using the ship's own bulk to create blind spots in its defensive coverage. Industrial laser. Group 7, target the sensor arrays, she commanded. Construction Team Alpha, use your welding torches on those hull joints. Demolition Squad, place your charges on the engine nacelles and get out of there. The Eternal Conquest, designed to withstand attacks from other military vessels using conventional weapons, found itself being systematically dismantled by tools and techniques it had never been designed to resist. Welding torches cut through armor joints, construction explosives created precisely placed breaches in the hull, and mining lasers carved deep gouges in critical systems. But the most decisive moment came when Admiral Thexvar made a critical error. Frustrated by the chaotic nature of the battle and the failure of his forces to achieve quick victory, he ordered all Kralaxian ships to converge on Earth for a massive coordinated assault. It was exactly what Elena had been hoping he would do. All human vessels, this is Commander Vasquez, she broadcast. Execute Gambit final phase. Show them what happens when you corner a pack of humans who are fighting for their families. What followed was unprecedented in galactic military history. Instead of meeting the Kralaxian assault with defensive fire, the entire human fleet launched a coordinated charge directly at the enemy formation. Every ship, from massive orbital platforms to single-person shuttles, accelerated toward the Kralaxian fleet in what appeared to be a suicidal attack. The Kralaxians, expecting the humans to break and scatter under concentrated fire, found themselves facing something they had never encountered. An enemy that became more dangerous when cornered. Human pilots, knowing their families and entire civilization depended on this moment, flew their ships with a reckless courage that turned every vessel into a guided missile. Jake Morrison's final act epitomized humanity's approach to the battle. With his ship's hull breached and life support failing, he aimed his cargo hauler directly at the Kralaxian flagship's bridge. "This is for every human who ever dreamed of reaching the stars," he transmitted as his ship struck home, its cargo of industrial chemicals creating a massive explosion that crippled the enemy command vessel. The turning point came when Admiral Thexvar realized that his technologically superior fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that refused to follow any known rules of engagement. For the first time in Kralaxian military history, an admiral was forced to issue a withdrawal order, not because his forces were outnumbered, but because the enemy was too unpredictable to defeat. "All ships, immediate retreat to hyperspace coordinates," Thexvar commanded, his voice heavy with something his species rarely experienced: uncertainty. "We will report to the High Command that this species requires different methods of approach." As the surviving Kralaxian vessels fled the Sol system, Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of Haven Point, watching the debris field that marked humanity's first victory in interstellar warfare. The cost had been terrible, with thousands of human lives lost and entire colonies damaged. But they had achieved something that would echo throughout the galaxy. They had proven that technological superiority and military tradition were no match for human ingenuity and determination. Dr. Chen joined her at the observation window. Still, wearing the oil-stained coverall she had worn while converting civilian equipment into weapons of war. "Do you think they'll be back?" she asked. Elena considered the question carefully. "Probably. But when they return, they'll be facing a different humanity." We've learned something about ourselves in this fight, something we never really understood before. We're not just good at surviving, we're good at winning against impossible odds. Word of humanity's victory spread quickly through galactic communication networks. For the first time in millennia, a primitive species had not only resisted Kralaxian conquest, but had actually forced them to retreat. The implications sent shockwaves through established galactic civilization. Within weeks, diplomatic envoys from dozens of species began arriving at Sol, eager to establish relations with the upstart civilization that had accomplished the impossible. Some came seeking alliance, others offering trade, and a few simply wanting to understand how such a seemingly primitive species had defeated the galaxy's dominant military force. The answer, as Elena explained to the first diplomatic delegation, was simple. We don't fight the way everyone else does. We fight the way humans do. And that makes all the difference. The Terran Gambit had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes, establishing humanity not as a conquered territory in someone else's empire, but as an independent force that demanded respect. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive had proven that innovation, adaptability, and the courage to fight for what matters most could overcome any technological disadvantage.